Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Prime Minister Imran Khan says the Lahore blast has links to Indian sponsorship of terrorism against Pakistan. He urged the global community to mobilize international institutions against India's rogue behavior. Earlier, National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf said the mastermind of the incident is an Indian citizen associated with RAW. In Afghanistan, the Taliban claim to have captured 7 more districts in Kandahar, Badakhshan and Farah provinces. Meanwhile, the Afghan Defense Ministry says security forces have killed about 130 fighters across 7 provinces. In the Philippines, the death toll from a military plane crash on Jolo Island in Sulu province has risen to 45. In a statement, the army said 50 people were taken to the hospital, leaving 5 unaccounted for. The military chief says the C-130 missed the runway while trying to regain power. In Myanmar, security forces killed at least 25 people in a confrontation with opponents of the military rule in the Sagaing region. Speaking to the foreign media, residents said military trucks entered their area on Friday and opened fire on a village to flesh out local resistance. According to an activist group, as many as 890 people have been killed and thousands detained since the military seized power in February. Brazil has reported more than 1,600 deaths from COVID-19 and over 54,000 cases overnight. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 29 lives and infected over 1,200 people in the past 24 hours. Globally, there are at least 3.9 million fatalities and over 183 million cases so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Prime Minister Imran Khan says the Lahore blast has links to Indian sponsorship of terrorism against Pakistan. He urged the global community to mobilize international institutions against India's rogue behavior. India's state sponsorship of terrorism has been exposed once again by the Pakistani intelligence and security agencies. Prime Minister Imran Khan instructed his team to brief the nation on findings of the Johor town blast investigation. He appreciated coordination of all Pakistan's civil and military intelligence agencies in identifying the terrorists and their international linkages. Earlier, addressing a press conference alongside the Punjab Police Chief and Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry, National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf said India was directly involved in the Lahore blast on the 23rd of June that left 3 people dead and 24 wounded. Yusuf said Pakistan's security agencies have concrete evidence and intelligence that points to direct Indian sponsorship of terrorism. He said forensic analysis suggests the involvement of Indian intelligence agency RAW in the terror attack. Yusuf added that the main mastermind of the incident is an Indian citizen associated with RAW. He also recalled that Pakistan had presented a dossier last year regarding Indian state-sponsored terrorism in Pakistan. For more on this, we are joined by Elsa, former ambassador and analyst from Islamabad. Thank you so much for your time. Now, Mr. Naqvi, Pakistan says India was directly behind the terror attack in the Lahore blast last month. What steps should Pakistan take to counter India's nefarious designs?
You see, the Indian involvement in terrorism is not new. It has been going on for many years, I think. In fact, I read an article that the 2000 and one attack on the Indian Parliament was also engineered by Indian and the blame was put on Pakistan. So it goes back many years. However, now it has become quite a big concerted program of sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan, and the latest evidence is that of the Lahore bomb blast. There is incontrovertible evidence of Indian involvement in this entire incident. And then India was exposed recently by the EU Disinfo Lab, which is a neutral body and has nothing to do with this region, but they have exposed fake Indian NGOs, Indian wire services, and Indian fake organizations, which have all been carrying out all kinds of fifth-generation warfare, of disinformation, and of promoting nefarious activities in Pakistan. So India is acting highly irresponsibly, and it needs to be exposed. And then the international community should be one should demand of the international community that it should immediately take this matter up with the Indians. We should not do it through the Security Council, which is highly politicized, but we should take up with individual countries the very fair request of their intervention in the matter to prevent the destabilization of this region.
Ambassador Naqvi, the most familiar and undeniable face of India's state sponsorship of terrorism against Pakistan, Kulbhushan Yadav. What role can the international community play to stop India from sponsoring and financing terrorist activities in Pakistan?
Yeah. Well, I think the international community has to impress upon India that it must act responsibly as a member state of the United Nations and as a member of the international community, and it should not do things which would be destabilizing for our region, because in this atmosphere of all kinds of unstable factors that are at play, particularly due to the American withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Indian actions of this kind have further aggravated the situation. And then Dr. Mohid Yusuf also spoke about these reports of drone flights in Kashmir and also one here in Islamabad, and said that this is all fake. There are no such drone flights or drones moving about in these areas, and India is trying to divert attention by creating these reports which are totally baseless and false.
Former Ambassador Elsa Naqvi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, in India, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has slammed the government over the controversy surrounding the sale of Rafale jets. In a tweet, Gandhi asked why Prime Minister Narendra Modi was not ready for a parliamentary probe into the deal. He further asked if it was because of a guilty conscience or an attempt to protect Modi's allies. This comes a day after a French judge was tasked to lead an investigation into alleged corruption in the multi-billion-dollar agreement. Congress said huge amounts of money were paid to middlemen in the deal, according to documents readily available. The deal for 36 fighter jets worth over $9 billion was signed in 2016 between New Delhi and French manufacturer Dassault Aviation. Now we have Ravi Shrivastava, a political analyst from Mumbai, to talk on the issue. Thank you so much for your time. Now, the French authorities have tasked a judge with probing in the sale of the Rafale jets to India on corruption suspicions. Do you suspect any kickbacks in the deal?
Absolutely. This deal is very shady, and this has been going on, although the government got a clean chit from the Honorable Supreme Court of India, but the opposition has been harping on that there were kickbacks, and it has now become very embarrassing for the government of India because the inquiry has been constituted in France by a judge. So there will be a lot of questions raised, and the whole scam will resurface now.
Mr. Shrivastava, will this investigation impact the overall rating of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, given the Congress's insistence of holding a parliamentary probe?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it will impact, because if you recall that time, the opposition Congress leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, had came out as a jibe, said the Prime Minister calls himself to be a watchman for the country, and that in fact was well brought the reputation of the Prime Minister down. And now it is once again the things have surfaced, and the issue is that the government presented rather concealed certain papers from the Honorable Supreme Court and got a judgment. So now Congress is demanding a joint parliamentary probe into it, because that will bring out so many other documents which were not presented before the Supreme Court. And that will really expose that what has gone wrong with the deal altogether. It's a 59,000 crore deal, and that earlier government, the UPA, had bargained for 526 crore for each aircraft, which this government ordered for 1,670 crore rupees INR each, which has, and instead of 126 Rafale, they are only buying 36 Rafales, and few have already been delivered. The deal has got quite a few surprising clauses, like there is no anti-corruption, and the probe can take place in India. There is one, Reliance has been given a job of maintenance and other things and development in India, and that's a flop company. It's a bankrupt industrialist, Mr. Anil Ambani, who was awarded this job, and the French government said that particular job was awarded to Reliance on the insistence of India government, or rather the Prime Minister of India.
Mr. Ravi Shrivastava, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, moving on, Indian occupation forces have arrested 20 Muslims for transporting cattle from Jammu to Kashmir Valley. The animals were being transported in the wake of upcoming Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha. Animal traders in the occupied valley are facing tough restrictions as Indian authorities have continued their crackdown on religious freedom. Last month, Hindu mobs lynched 4 Muslims on suspicion of stealing cattle in Rajouri district and Indian state of Tripura. Several dozen people have been killed and hundreds injured in mob attacks since 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party came into power. In Afghanistan, the Taliban claimed to have captured 7 more districts in Kandahar, Farah, and Badakhshan province. In a tweet, the group spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid claimed Panjwai, Fararud, Bahrak, Koistan, and Kufe-Ab districts. Kandahar Provincial Council had confirmed the fall of Panjwai, but accused government forces of intentionally withdrawing. Meanwhile, as the Taliban and Kabul's forces continue to fight, Afghan Defense Ministry said the security forces have killed about 130 fighters over the past 24 hours, whereas the Taliban claimed to have seized more than 100 out of nearly 400 districts in the country so far. Pakistan says the United States is leaving without settling the Afghan issue. Talking to the media, advisor to Prime Minister on National Security, Mueed Yusuf, called for a political solution. Yusuf reiterated that Pakistan will not allow anyone to use its soil against Kabul. The advisor highlighted that the Afghan government and the Taliban must reach a compromise. Yusuf said Pakistan is committed to durable peace in Afghanistan and cannot bear a civil war-like situation in the country. He also urged Washington and Kabul to recognize Islamabad's peace efforts. In the Philippines, at least 45 people have been killed as a military plane crashed on Jolo Island in Sulu province. In a statement, Defense Minister Deflin Lorenzana said 50 people have been rescued so far. Lorenzana said the plane carried 92 people, including 3 pilots and 5 crew. Army Chief General Silituro Sobijana told media that the C-130 missed runway while trying to land. Sobijana said the aircraft crashed near a village in the town of Patikul. In Myanmar, at least 25 anti-junta fighters and civilians have been killed during clashes with the military in the country's Sagaing region. The region has been the site of multiple skirmishes between local defense forces and the military. Speaking to the foreign media, residents said military trucks entered their area on Friday and opened fire on a village to flush out the local resistance. But state-run media said that the military was patrolling the area when they were ambushed. The ruling junta has struggled to impose its authority since taking power on the 1st of February. According to an activist group, as many as 890 people have been killed so far and thousands detained. Israeli warplanes have bombed the Gaza Strip, violating a fragile ceasefire with Hamas yet again. The Israel Defense Forces allege that the attack was a response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. The Israeli army claims it struck a weapons manufacturing facility and a rocket launcher used by Hamas. Medics say one man was critically wounded. The occupation forces have also shot dead a civilian in the village south of Nablus city. A military spokesperson says they were trying to disperse confrontations between Israeli settlers and Palestinians. Palestine's Ministry of Health says 2 other civilians were injured in the clashes in the West Bank. Russia says a British warship's recent incursion into the waters near Crimea is a kind of move that merits a tough response from Moscow. This comes a day after Russian warplanes practiced bombing enemy ships in the Black Sea during training exercises. Last week, Moscow challenged the right of HMS Defender to pass through waters near Crimea, which London said it had every right to do. Russia said that the vessel had illegally entered its territorial waters and accused London of a provocation. Moscow has said it could bomb UK's naval vessels if there are more such actions by the British Navy off Crimea. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, but most of the world still recognizes it as part of Ukraine. Brazil has reported more than 1,600 deaths from COVID-19 and over 54,000 cases overnight. Globally, there are at least 3.9 million fatalities and over 183 million cases. More in this report.
The WHO has warned that the world is in a dangerous stage of the pandemic as a Delta variant rages in around 98 countries. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says vaccine availability around the world is being outpaced by variants. Australia's New South Wales state reported a fall in New Delhi coronavirus cases following 2 days of record infections. Officials implored Sydney residents to follow rules so they could end a lockdown next week.
So whilst the results overnight are very pleasing, there's no doubt the impact of the lockdown has been evidenced. However, to keep that trend going, we need to make sure people don't give in and don't break those rules we've put in place. They're there for a reason. And yes, it's great, sunny outdoors. We'd much prefer you to go outdoors in a COVID-safe way than go to those riskier indoor settings.
The U.S. is set to miss President Joe Biden's target of vaccinating 70% of adults by July 4. More than 605,000 people have died from COVID-19 in the country so far. In Brazil, thousands demanded the impeachment of President Jair Bolsonaro over his pandemic response. The country faces the world's second deadliest outbreak after the U.S., compounded by a slow vaccine rollout. Portugal says it hopes to vaccinate a further 1.7 million people in the next 2 weeks as the highly transmissible Delta variant spreads. Whereas in Asia, India has reported over 43,000 cases and 955 deaths in the last 24 hours, pushing the toll over 402,000.
In Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 29 more lives in the past 24 hours. The health ministry said the virus has infected over 1,200 people overnight. The ministry said out of over 32,000 active cases, more than 1,800 are critical. Pakistan has so far registered over 22,400 deaths and more than 962,000 cases. Meanwhile, more than 907,000 people have recovered. Officials say the Moderna vaccine will be available at designated vaccination centers from Monday. Pakistan has received 700,000 more doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China. Another 1.3 million doses are expected to arrive in the country on Sunday. In Indonesia, at least 33 patients have died after a hospital on the Java island ran out of oxygen amid a nationwide surge in COVID-19 cases. A hospital spokesperson said that the deaths occurred due to delays from oxygen suppliers over the weekend. The oxygen shortage in the city's largest hospital was reportedly due to an increased influx of patients. In the last 48 hours, as many as 33 patients have died during treatment for COVID-19 in the hospital. Indonesia is battling a surge in COVID-19 cases that has strained its healthcare system. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Ethiopia, the Tigray rebels say they want a full withdrawal of Eritrean troops before talks with the government regarding a ceasefire. In a statement, the Tigray's People's Liberation Front said that it will accept a ceasefire if there were guarantees of no further invasions. They also called for forces from the neighboring state of Amhara to return to their pre-war territories. So far, there has been no comment from the Ethiopian government. Earlier, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed deep concern over the situation in the restive Tigray region. He called for a complete humanitarian access to the territory, saying the destruction of civilian infrastructure was unacceptable. Around 400,000 people are in famine condition, with nearly 2 million on the brink of it. In Mali, 4 soldiers have been killed after their patrol was ambushed by suspected militants in the central town of Liri. The region is where Mali is battling militants linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The attack comes 2 days after France announced the resumption of joint military operations with Mali. France has deployed over 5,000 troops in the West African nation to help combat militants. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has opened a strategic naval base on the Mediterranean Sea to secure shipping lines. In a statement, the presidency said that the base will focus on securing the country's northern and western fronts. The base lies some 160 miles west of Alexandria, towards the border with Libya. State media said that it includes an airstrip and a 1,000-meter-long pier. The inaugural ceremony was attended by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Egypt has other 3 naval bases in the Mediterranean and 1 in the Red Sea. Former United States President Donald Trump has condemned New York prosecutors over charges against his company and financial advisor. The Trump Organization and its chief financial officer have pleaded not guilty to tax fraud. Addressing thousands of supporters in Sarasota, Florida, Trump alleged a prosecutorial misconduct. He accused the authorities of politically victimizing his family's employees and company. Trump denounced President Joe Biden's policies and repeated his claims of fraud in the 2020 election. The former president urged his supporters to back Republicans in their bid to regain control of Congress next year. President Joe Biden has directed U.S. intelligence agencies to investigate the latest ransomware attack. The colossal attack hit hundreds of American businesses and led to suspicions of Russian gang involvement. Talking to reporters in Michigan, Biden said that the government is not certain who is behind the attack. He said the initial thinking is that it is not the Russian government. However, the president reiterated that Washington will respond if the investigation points to Moscow.
Is that direct to the intelligence community, you give me a deep dive on what's happened, and I'll know better tomorrow. And if it is either with the knowledge of and or a consequence of Russia, then I told Putin we will respond. And
you didn't tell him already, sir?
No, I haven't called because we're not certain. The initial thinking was it was not the Russian government, but we're not sure yet.
In the United States, police have arrested 11 heavily armed self-professed militia members near Boston after an overnight standoff. In a statement, the police said the arrested people were dressed in military style. They added that the suspects were traveling from the state of Rhode Island for training in Maine. American media has identified the group as members of the Rise of the Moors. The militia does not recognize American laws but professes to be peaceful. In the U.S. state of Florida, officials have temporarily paused rescue efforts at the site of a residential building that collapsed in Miami. They are preparing to demolish the building's standing portion ahead of a tropical storm. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava says the demolition can take place on Sunday. Talking to reporters, Cava said the families of the victims have been informed of the decision and that they understand. Meanwhile, the death toll rose to 24 after rescue workers pulled out 2 more bodies from the rubble. Authorities say 191 people have been accounted for so far, while 121 are still missing. Pope Francis has been admitted to hospital in Rome for scheduled surgery to treat a colon problem. A Vatican spokesperson said the pontiff was suffering from a symptomatic diverticular stenosis of the colon. The condition can cause recurrent abdominal pain as well as changes in bowel habits. It is the first time the Pope has been admitted to the hospital since his election in 2013. Earlier, the Pope appeared to be fine in health as he addressed thousands of people in St. Petersburg Square for his Sunday message. China has started building the world's largest hypergravity centrifuge by capacity in Hangzhou City of Zhejiang Province. The pit for the main units is expected to be completed by the end of this November. The centrifuge is designed to have a capacity of at least 1,500 gravity tons. It will be the most extensive multidisciplinary experiment platform for China's major science projects. Currently, the United States owns the world's most powerful centrifuge with 1,200 gravity tons. At least 2 people have been killed after tropical storm Elsa battered the southern coast of the Dominican Republic. Officials say that the deaths were recorded in Bahoruco province after a wall collapsed due to heavy winds. Some flooding was also reported in San Cristobal province, prompting about 100 evacuations. However, the storm is slowing down as it passed between Haiti and Jamaica. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says Elsa is now clocking maximum sustained winds at 110 kilometers per hour. It is expected to move across central and western Cuba and head towards the Florida Straits by Monday. Several nations have sent firefighting aircrafts to help Cyprus tackle a wildfire described by officials as the worst in the country's history. Greece, Italy, and Israel have pledged help, whereas British troops stationed on the island are already involved. The blaze is spreading through the southern Limassol district and has forced the evacuation of several villages. At least 4 people were confirmed to have died in the fire. The victims are believed to be Egyptian farm workers who were reported missing after their car was destroyed by the blaze. President Nikos Anastasiades described the fire as a tragedy and pledged immediate assistance to the victims and their families. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. More than 700 rescuers have arrived at a Japanese town hit by a landslide that killed 2 people. About 20 people are still missing in the resort town of Atima, southwest of the capital, Tokyo. The rescuers climbed onto cracked roofs and searched cars thrown onto the buildings amid intermittent rain. Japanese media says about 387 people have been evacuated as of Sunday morning. The meteorological agency says the heavy rain is expected to continue in areas along the Sea of Japan. It warned the public to be vigilant against further mudslides, flooding, and swollen rivers. Canadian authorities have ordered the residents of British Columbia to evacuate amid raging wildfires. Officials say 176 fires are active across the province, including 76 that were reported just over the past 2 days. They said more than 1,300 homes have been ordered to evacuate. Authorities noted that the fires are expected to raise 100,000 hectares by the weekend. Meteorologists have warned of more lightning strikes that could stoke fires banned by high winds. British Columbia has been recovering from an unprecedented heat wave, which has so far caused 719 deaths. The Brooklyn Museum in New York has returned 1,305 artifacts to Costa Rica. They were looted during the construction of a railway and brought to the United States in the 19th or early 20th century. More in this report.
An unfinished tombstone, a large ceramic vase painted with beeswax, human representations, and ancient tools to process corn are artifacts from a collection of pieces returned to Costa Rica. It is the second time the Brooklyn Museum in New York City has returned pieces, some older than 2,000 years, to the Central American country.
The pieces were at the Brooklyn Museum because when the Atlantic Railroad was built and Minor Keith extracted the pieces at the time, we have an approximate. There is no clear inventory, but there is an approximate of 16,000 pieces that were taken out of the country. So when these pieces were extracted and reached the United States, Minor Keith distributed them to different museums.
Although the pieces arrived at the end of last year, the handing over of the artifacts was delayed by customs in Costa Rica. Since their return, archaeologists at the National Museum have been in awe and spent the last couple of months listing all the pieces, which only now have been displayed.
The important thing about these pieces is that we also have stone and ceramic pieces within the collection. What do I mean? For example, we have stone pieces that were unfinished or were in the process of being made.
There are still more artifacts from Costa Rica and Brooklyn and other museums in the United States.
In the English city of Oxford, a host of events marked Alice's Day and the 150th anniversary of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Alice's Day is a festive held every year to celebrate all things Alice in Wonderland.
A street theater featuring a giant puppet of Alice and talking flowers attracted young visitors to share the magic of Carroll's creations. Some events were held online to allow participation in line with England's COVID-19 restrictions. Lewis Carroll was a lecturer in mathematics at Oxford's Christ Church. According to the university, his stories incorporate some of the animals, friends, and places from around the city. Published in December 1871, Through the Looking Glass tells of Carroll's much-loved heroine, Alice. She goes through a mirror and then travels back in time to help her friend, the flamboyant Mad Hatter. A sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, it is known as the first of Alice's stories to have gained popularity.
In France, the 74th Cannes Film Festival will open on Tuesday as the last year's event was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The event scheduled for May will now run from the 6th to 17th of July as the country lifted coronavirus restrictions last month. Though wearing masks is no more compulsory across France, the participants are still required to keep their masks on. The organizers have also set up a vaccination center near the venue. Welcome back. The United Arab Emirates says the current oil production deal among the OPEC Plus alliance members is unfair. The group will resume talks on Monday after failing to reach a deal on oil output policy on Friday. In a statement, UAE's energy ministry said it backs an output increase from August as the market is in dire need of higher production. The ministry added that the country will only extend the agreement if its baseline production is reviewed. The UAE has ambitious production plans and has invested billions of dollars to boost capacity. The latest row can put the energy market's post-coronavirus recovery at risk. China has ordered app stores to remove the ride-hailing firm Didi after finding it had illegally collected users' personal data. In a tweet, an official of China's Cyberspace Administration said Didi has been told that to comply with the country's data protection rules. Didi responded by saying that it will make the necessary changes to comply with the rules. On Wednesday, Didi debuted in New York following a $4.4 billion initial public offering. The app is popular in China and offers over 20 million rides every day on average.